Hi, everyone. Welcome to Creating Analytic Rubrics for Assessing Learning Competencies and Assignment Criteria. I am Dr. Annalisa McMillan, and I will be your guide through this video. We will go ahead and start our session by talking about analytic rubrics, and then how to align our rubrics to ensure rubrics are measuring our objectives and competencies, how to use rubrics in Canvas. And then after the video has been completed, you can create a rubric for an assignment using the attached activity. An analytic rubric is a tool used in the evaluation of student work that lists and describes specific evaluative criteria and levels of achievement for each criterion. This type of rubric breaks down a task or assignments into measurable parts and assigns specific scores for each component. By using an analytic rubric, you can more accurately and objectively assess your student work and give more specific and useful feedback. You can identify areas of strengths and weaknesses for students and ultimately improve on your students' outcomes. You can also use the rubric to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the assignment itself and make necessary changes. Rubrics also encourage student ownership of their work by providing students with clear expectations and guiding them towards specific goals. Being transparent and sharing rubrics as guides improve student outcomes. Analytic grading rubrics help ensure consistency and objectivity in grading, as each criterion and level of achievement is clearly defined and applied consistently across all assignments. Analytic grading rubrics clearly communicate the expectations for each assignment, helping students understand what they need to do to achieve the desired levels of performance. Grading with an analytic rubric is often faster and more efficient than other forms of grading, as the criteria and the levels of achievement are clearly outlined. Analytic grading rubrics allow for targeted and specific feedback on each criterion, making it easier for students to understand where they need to improve and how to do so. Analytic grading rubrics can be used to individualize learning by providing specific feedback and guidance to each student based on their individual strengths and weaknesses. As you can see here, we have some assignments. These are authentic learning or real-world assignments. These are very subjective assignments, so you would need to create a rubric for them. But what assignments don't need a rubric? Analytic grading rubrics can be used to give those feedback on their individual strengths and weaknesses. But are there individual strengths and weaknesses in your quizzes, in your exams, in closed-ended questions? When you think about what assessments that do not need a rubric, think about those assessments that have one answer and one answer only, or do not give students any space for that individual skills to be shown. There are 4 steps to a rubric. Step number 1, we create the criteria. Step number 2, create achievement levels. Step 3, create criteria descriptions. And step 4, we create the point values. Let's talk about creating criteria labels. This part of the rubric lists those specific aspects of the task or concept that the student will be evaluated on. These may include things like accuracy, organization, creativity, or use of the evidence. The criteria should be clear and specific so that both the student and the evaluator understand what is being assessed. Each criterion should focus on a different skill and be measurable in the student's work. Here are some examples: clarity, synthesis of ideas, data presentation, mechanics. Next up is the achievement levels. The achievement levels of performance describe the range of possible outcomes for each criterion. These may be expressed in descriptive categories: excellent, good, fair, poor, met, partially met, not met. Each level should include those descriptions of what the student must do to meet that level as well. Here are some examples of the levels. So in 3 levels, we have developing, competent, exemplar. in 4 levels: beginning, developing, accomplished, exemplary. Next up is the criteria description. So these provide details of what each level of performance looks like for each criterion. They help the evaluator determine which level of performance best fits the student's work. For example, a descriptor for accuracy criterion might describe what constitutes a mostly accurate versus completely accurate response. Criteria are the specific objectives or expectations used to evaluate the student work. Typically, they are broken down into categories, features, or components of the assignment. Analytic rubrics use the criteria to evaluate the student work, with each criterion aligned to that specific category or standard. Some common criteria used in analytic rubrics and why they are important are content knowledge, where it evaluates the accuracy and completeness of a student's understanding of the topic or subject matter. As you can see, we have the paper demonstrates that the author fully understands. In exemplary. In accomplished, we move to, for the most part, understands and has applied concepts. Here are some lists of performance labels. The final part of the rubric is the scoring system. This determines how the student's work will be evaluated based on the levels of performance and descriptors. Depending on the rubric, the scores may be weighted differently for each criterion or may be combined into an overall score. The scoring system should be fair and transparent so the student understands how their work is being evaluated. Let's talk a little bit about competency, objectives, and rubrics and alignment. Rubric alignment is important. As you can see here, I have a rubric and I have some learning objectives and a competency. This is a needs assessment plan and includes all the information a student would need to do to create a needs assessment for a training program. The learning objective is to design a needs assessment, so I know that they will meet this learning objective if they meet the criteria here in the fully met and partially met sections. I also know that by designing a needs assessment for a training, that they are meeting this competency on assessing an audience knowledge and learning needs. So I have aligned my assessment, the needs assessment plan, and my rubric aligns with my learning objective and my competency. Using Canvas and rubrics. Canvas has a built-in rubric system that allows you to easily grade your assessments using those rubrics you've created in Canvas. After selecting your rubrics and adding them to your assignment, you will find them located in your Canvas gradebook, where you can go ahead and select if you check use this rubric for grading at the bottom. When you are building it, you can check these sections by clicking on them and having them turn green interactively and scoring the points as needed. Now it's your turn. You can select the QR code here or type in the URL to find the rubric design activity, where you will go ahead and take an assessment and select an assignment, and then unpack that assignment by sharing what your expectations, what that student's perfect assessment looks like. And then you will create a rubric. And then once you're done creating your rubric, you can go ahead and review your rubric using this rubric on Rubrics to see how well you did. Thank you for joining us.